Hello, thank you for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier of Thinking Stamping and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in New Zealand. And today I'm going to share with you how I made this card using the gorgeously made bundle. And I'm sharing it with you because firstly I like it, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, but it demonstrates a couple of things. And the first thing it demonstrates is that card making doesn't have to be complex and full of techniques. This card is really about using pretty paper and not being afraid to alter it. The other thing it's about is, when you are stuck for inspiration, when I'm stuck for inspiration, one thing you can do is to look around you and see what other people have done. And obviously one of the other people is Stampin' Up itself, and that's the catalogue. And so often if you're stuck for ideas, looking through the catalogue, even at sets that you don't think you like, you can find an idea that you can case, and that just means to copy and selectively edit it. So using the ideas but making it your own. So I was flicking through the catalogue and I saw this card in the bundle section, because if you don't already realise this, the samples that Stampin' Up show you in the other part of the catalogue, if it's a bundle, you get a different sample in the bundle section. And I liked this card. I liked elements of this card, so I reckon I can do something very similar. So this is quite a lot of copy and some select editing, but I thought I'd talk about how I did it, and of course it's very easy for you to make and have a go at yourself. So the first thing you need obviously is the gorgeously made bundle, which is this, and it bundles up with this lovely set of dies which really extend the options that you've got with the stamp set. So I'm very, very fond of this stamp set, and I'm sure that you'll see more of it in my video channel as the year progresses. So if you see anything that I use today that you like the bundle, like the paper, like anything that I use, please shop with me. There's a link to my online store in the video description below and through the end cards at the end of this video. That is, of course, if you live in New Zealand. Okay, so gorgeously made is what you need. In terms of paper, I've chosen to use a basic grey base. And so, as always for me, it's a standard size card base. It's half of an A4 piece of paper pretty much. So it's 21 centimetres wide, scored at 10.5, and I've cut it at 14.8. So that's my base. If you are not a metrics person, if you're an imperial person, then just use your standard size card base and alter accordingly. Like for instance, the next thing I'm going to say is for the inside, I need a piece of paper, a piece of basic white that's half a centimetre smaller. So that's roughly 1/4 inch if you're an imperial person. So this is 10 by 14.3, but that's for the inside. So we'll pop that aside because we don't need it just yet. For the paper at the front, so select the paper you're going to use. Again, it's cut the same size as this, so it's 10, it started life 10 centimetres that way and 14.3 that way, but as you can see I've already altered it, and so I just took this die, the long edged die here, and I just trimmed, and you see what it does is it gives you like a spiral bound notebook effect and a lovely little line of stitching. Now when you take the die out, you do get left with, this is the bit that fits in. Now I'm keeping that because it's pretty in itself, and I'll show you what I've done with it later on. So that's that. You also need a piece of, I've used Bubble Bath for this die cut here. It's quite intricate, this die cut, so when you do it, probably run it through your die cutting machine a couple of times. Make sure you take your pick tool to release the cut, because it is quite delicate and it can be torn. So you need a piece of Bubble Bath. For that die, you need a piece of another piece of basic grey that will fit that die. And you need a little piece of grey granite, because I've used this little torn paper die for the sentiment, and I've done a grey granite shadow underneath it. So those things will miraculously transform into my die cuts, my 1, my 2, and my 3. And of course the other thing you need is a little piece of white to do the sentiment. Now the sentiments that come with the set, you're a great friend, thank you and hello. Now, I was kind of missing the fact there wasn't a happy birthday. I was feeling a little bit sad about that because a happy birthday would be wonderful. But I decided I'd do You're a Great Friend because I can always put You're a Great Friend on the outside and I can do my happy birthday greetings on the inside. So that's what I'm doing with this one. So that's all my bits. Now, after you've done your bits, the rest of it is pretty straightforward, really. So what I've done is, I know that there's a big die cut sort of cluster in the middle, but underneath it there is some stamping. So I've taken these two stamps, the solid foliage stamp and the more lacy, I don't know, tree bud leafy stamp. And I'm going to use grey granite for this because I want to introduce a little bit more grey granite into my card, into my design. So I'm going to use this. You could, if you wanted to, perfectly happily use basic grey. And I'm a little bit worried that this grey granite has dried out. So we'll just have to see about that. And I'm just going to stamp in the middle, sort of swooshing out to one side. I'm going to press 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give it at least 10 for the ink to have maximum chance to transfer. And, oh, that's very light, isn't it? Okay, well, in the absence of any grey granite re-inker in my craft room, I am going to go and do another one in basic grey, just because I don't think that's really dark enough. So it's not going to matter that it's there, it's just going to look like a shadow. So I'm going to do the same thing again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One for luck. See, that's much better. Okay, now if I'd had a grey granite re-inker to hand, I would have darkened up my ink pad and done that. So, you know, that's right, just a different design choice, doesn't really matter. Now, going out the other way, I'm going to use this little foliage stamp, and I'm still going to stamp it up ink it up that way because I just find it a bit easier when the stamps get some size. When the stamp's pretty much bigger than the ink pad, I find it easier to do it that way. So we'll close that up. And we'll have this one come artfully out to this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. And so now we've got a bit of a stamped backdrop. And we will attach this to the card front now. So you know me, I'm a glue girl. So I'm going to use glue, so I've got my little wiggle room to just straighten up if I get crooked. Now these little things here, I'm just going to use very tiny little dots. If your glue is really fresh and, you know, is pouring out rather than being able to be controlled a little bit, then maybe use a sponge to do it. Dab it on with a sponge. Okay, so let's just centre that as much as we can. Just press those down gently. Okay, and now we are on to adding the die cuts, and here I am going to use a sponge because those die cuts are quite delicate. So I've got my silicone mat, I've got a little bit of liquid glue. I might well need some more, so we'll just leave that open, and I'm just going to dab on some glue. Whoops. And then we shall add that lovely spray to our card front. You can angle it however you like, so that as much or as little of your stamping shows as you want. I'm actually quite happy that that grey granite is there, because even though it's very faint, it does come into play in the rest of the design, so I'm glad that it's there. In fact, I kind of wish I'd done another grey granite of that, but, well, I haven't, so it's a bit late now. Okay, so now we will add a bit of glue to this one, which is my favourite die cut of the entire set. I just love this one. Okay. And we'll have him swoosh out in the opposite direction. And I've placed it so that you can still see that spray. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim that one off, just a shade. Okay, next up is sentiment, which is quite straightforward. So I'm just going to put some glue onto my shadow label, and then I'm going to layer up my sentiment. Now I did the sentiment in grey granite. You could do it in basic grey if you prefer, for a darker look, but again I was trying to just incorporate a little bit of grey granite, a little bit more grey granite into my design. So if you like a darker look, use a darker paper. Okay, sorry, a darker ink. Come on, I want you to just wiggle yourself straight. That's better. Okay, I'm going to dimensional him on. One, two, three. Big tick to me for being so restrained in my dimensional usage. There was a little part of me that was just wanting to put 4. I'll stick with 3. Now I'm going to line that up on my grid paper so that I maximise my chance of putting this on straight. And then we're up to embellishment. Now you can see here that I just got myself totally carried away and I've done a really big lush bow. That's a little bit for the faint-hearted. Like the more layers you have in a bow, the more likely it is to muck up. So we'll see how that goes. If you don't like the look of that and you just want to do a single or a double, then by all means do that. But I'll show you how I attempted the quadruple bow. So I've got 2 pieces of twine here, and this is why I wanted to incorporate some grey granite, because I've got the Basics Essentials twine pack, which is the white is missing because I've used it all up, black, vanilla, crumb cake and grey granite. So that's partly why I wanted to use the grey granite. The other reason I wanted to use the grey granite is because I wanted it to sort of lighten things up, because the dark grey was quite heavy. However, if it was all dark, if I'd done the base in grey granite, it was all a bit insipid. So anyway, so what I've done is I've got 2 pieces of the grey granite twine and 50 centimetres long, and I've folded them in half. So I've now got 4 layers. Now, if I didn't have this device, which is a homemade bow maker made for me by my upline's husband, so therefore not available in shops, but you probably have something similar around. You can just tie it by hand, but I'm going to attempt the bow maker. So I've taken my ½ metre and I've folded it into 4, and now I'm just going to get in here, oops, and attempt to make my bow. And there she is. And now I can just cut that string. I did it in 2 pieces and cut it because it's just, I find it easier to manipulate that way. Okay, so now I can attach it to wherever I like. And I'm going to use some glue dots to attach that. So I'm going to get my glue dots and I'm going to get my take your pick tool. And I'm just going to pop some dots in the right place. And I'm not going to rely on one because it's, a 4-stranded bow. So it's got a bit of heft in it. And I don't want it to fall off. So I'm actually going to put 3 glue dots in there. And then I'm going to press my little bow on. Give it a really good press so it's stuck. And then I'm just going to have a look and see if it needs a wee bit of a trim. Well, I do want an extravagant tail, but this side looks just a shade longer, so I'm just going to give it a wee trim. Now, you might not like the long-tailed look. I do, so I'm going to leave it. But if it was yours, obviously, you're free to cut those tails to as short or long as you like. Now, to repeat that, I started with 2 lengths that were 50 centimetres long. That was to get an extravagant tail. If you don't want a tail that extravagant, then of course you don't need to cut it that long. Now, the very final thing I'm going to use are these adhesive backed sequins trio, which are part of the Gorgeously Made suite. So the embellishments, the little sequins, do tie in with most of the papers. So on this one, I went for a more neutral look, and I used some of these little pearlescent ones. I'm not going to use the green, but this time I think just for a bit of variety I might go for some of the pink ones. So we'll just add in some sequins, maybe 3, perhaps 1 there, and a 3rd one a little bit further up. Okay. So the only other thing to show you is what I did on the inside. Now on this one, this is where my little piece of off-cut die from the outside, from the inside, I suppose, of that. See, I've lifted it off. It's got a bit of whoosh in it, so I could have gone straight across, but I made it into more of a banner by just bending it slightly, and then I just used the stamps in basic grey, fresh freesia, and grey granite. I used the ends of those stamps there to just create a little cluster in the corner, which I thought was quite nice. And of course I'm gonna at some point add in a happy birthday. I'll probably just handwrite it, but you could stamp it if you wanted to. So there we go. There is my I don't know what I'm going to call it, my cased Gorgeously Made friend card. And I hope that you can see that you don't have to spend a lot of time and effort on technique if you just use really pretty paper and really pretty die cuts and just put them together in a pleasing way. So as always, I'm very happy to answer questions, and you can reach me through my Jan Clothier Independent Stamping Up Facebook page, or you can leave comments below and I'll always answer those. Once again, if you live in New Zealand and you've seen anything that you like and you want to add to your craft stash, then please shop with me. There's a link in the video description below and through my blog. And above all else, everyone, happy stamping.